Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. My rabbinic colleague, Annie Tucker, shared this story from Thomas Friedman's classic book, From Beirut to Jerusalem. And in that book, Thomas Friedman tells the story of Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong, our American hero and astronaut, the first to walk on the moon. He visited Israel after his historic lunar mission. He was taken on a tour of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem, and the Old City. Standing at the Hulda Gate, atop the steps leading to the Temple Mount, Neil Armstrong asked whether Jesus had ever stepped anywhere near where they were standing. His Israeli tour guide immediately responded, yes. Being Jewish, he would certainly have walked these steps many times in his lifetime. At that moment, Neil Armstrong uttered these words, I have to tell you, I am more excited stepping on these Jerusalem stones than I was stepping on the moon. As we continue our preparations for Pesach, our March to Freedom, which we celebrate each year at Seder, and end with that inspiring and powerful call, the Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And as we here in B'nai Yeshurun and in Cleveland and throughout the world continue to celebrate this most special 75th anniversary of the establishment of the modern state of Israel with our year-long celebrations, the incredible miracle of Eretz Yisrael, our promised land, our spiritual home, the startup nation, we feel that love in our hearts and live that excitement of Neil Armstrong for our Israel that we love so much. But we also follow the news. We know the realities of the difficulties in Israel today, the challenge to be a nation committed to democracy, security, equality, and justice. We see it here in our own country, the vaunted United States of America. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory writes this, the enduring message of Passover is a dramatically new vision of what a society might be like, a difficult freedom, demanding individual and collective responsibility. Passover makes us taste the choice, the bread of affliction, the bitter herbs of slavery, the 4 cups of wine that mark a long walk to liberty. The choice is ours. Many people have the tradition to finish their Seder by singing Hatikva, or Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, pledging our loyalty and love to the Jewish state. Some rabbis suggest that we should fill up a 5th cup at the end of the Seder, bless it in celebration of the miraculous establishment of the modern state of Israel 75 years ago. The traditional Seder ends with those words, L'shana haba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, which Erica Brown teaches means this. We end on a note of possibility and pray that it brings us closer to holiness, closer to the spiritual center of the world, closer to our families and our sense of sacred purpose. We hope that the words next year in Jerusalem bring us closer to each other as a people with Jerusalem as a shared heart. These 3 words remind us to have faith in God and hope for a better future. As the Seder ends with our eyes and hearts turned to Jerusalem and Israel, our march to freedom always ends in our Holy Land. But perhaps, like me, you have been following the news of unrest, of schisms, of questions and of protests, of Israel's solidarity, democracy, and possibly, God forbid, even its future. We all have our different Israeli news sources and commentaries that we follow. Times of Israel, Haaretz, Ynet, different people living in Israel or friends. And I follow the daily writings of Daniel Gordis and his daily email called Inside Israel that I often disagree with or question, but the past few weeks I think have been spot on. For tonight we'll begin the 12th week of protests in what organizers call the Rally for Freedom, now happening in more than 100 different locations across Israel. Tonight, The main Tel Aviv rally, which is probably happening within minutes right now, will feature the daughter of Eli Cohen, the famous Israeli spy, and Tzipi Livni. An organizer has announced that this week, with votes expected in Knesset on the controversial judicial reform, will be what they are calling a week of paralysis, with increasing protests, calls for compromise, opportunities to sit together and to listen to each other. Daniel Gordis, the renowned and respected author and teacher, this month is publishing his newest book called Impossible Takes Longer. 75 years after its creation, has Israel fulfilled its founders' dreams? Impossible takes longer. In his recent email update, this is what he says from a place of pain and difficulty, and I quote Daniel Gordis. Israel is a country drowning in a sea of betrayal. The centrists feel betrayed that the democracy as they knew it is gone. The country their grandparents created is no more. The settlers feel betrayed that no one is there to protect and support them. The ultra-Orthodox Haredim feel betrayed by a country that never wanted them. The Ethiopian Jews feel betrayed by a country that boasted about saving them but mistreated them. The secular left feels betrayed that their values are no more. The reservists and the pilots feel betrayed and are threatening not to show up for their service. The Israeli Arabs feel betrayed. Mizrahi Jews from Arab lands feel betrayed. In the words of Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, we say, Od lo avda tikvatenu, liot am chofshi be'artzenu. Our hope is not yet lost, to be a free people in our land. But Rabbi Gordis asks, if we're going to repair and heal the rage that beats in the hearts of the Israeli soul, we're first going to have to understand it. This wellspring of hate and resentment wasn't forced on us by anyone else, by the Ottomans, by the British. We created it. He writes, what we're about to find out is, are we too late to fix it? Israel is a country drowning in a sea of betrayal and resentment, a country drowning in a sea of mutual hatred. He closes his email with this: is it a country that may not make it back to shore? Is there hope? What is the answer? On Pesach, we celebrate our promise of freedom, our vision of creating an ideal society, leaving the intolerance and injustice of Egypt. And of course, on Pesach, we ask the four kashas, the four questions. So I'll present four brief answers that potentially can help us frame an answer for where Israel is and where we are living in the diaspora. The first is our Torah portion this week. Parshat Vayikra begins an entire book devoted to the theme of sacrifice. Perhaps this is a time of sacrifice, a time where we bring what we have, the little that we have, and offer it up as a gift and an opportunity to begin discussion. For two, compromise. When we sacrifice, we give of ourselves for the greater good. And that is my hope of what Israel will be. Of course, on Pesach, the third answer is that we all sit together, wise, wicked, simple, and the one who doesn't even know how to ask or to speak. Perhaps that is what Israel needs right now, that opportunity to sit down at the table, to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and to see those sacrifices that all are making for compromise. And the fourth is Hatikva, hope. We don't have the answers, but we have our Haggadah, which ends with that fateful phrase of hope, next year in Jerusalem, that impels us with a call to action, L'Shana Haba b'Yerushalayim, because we as Jews believe that one day our world will be better, that Jerusalem is a place that we must reach for, that we're not there yet. And in the words of the New American Haggadah's commentary, Jerusalem that we pray for at the end of Pesach is a place where the hungry will be fed, the homeless will be sheltered, the powerless will have power. The sick will be healed, where all will live together in fear, equal, where no one is persecuted or enslaved. But until that day arrives, it is our job to do the work to bring a Jerusalem for reality for all. An Israel united, an Israel that stands together, an Israel that isn't drowned in the sea, but an Israel that crosses to continue its march to freedom, to build that society that is ideal, filled with virtue and justice. As we celebrate Israel at 75, the miracle of Israel, all of Israel's incredible accomplishments against all odds, at our Seders, perhaps we must ask ourselves a fifth question. In what ways has Israel fulfilled Rabbi Sachs' vision of a new society based on virtue, freedom, equality, and growth, and human dignity? In what ways has Jerusalem become that reality our ancestors longed for thousands of years? And when we say next year in Jerusalem, what are we hoping will change in Israel for the year to come and for the next 75 years to come? Shabbat Shalom.